Welcome to Empathy Stories, where we bring you gripping tales of love, ambition, and the twists of fate that change lives forever. Today's story follows Lily, a young woman from a modest background, whose life takes an unexpected turn when a chance encounter with a wealthy billionaire changes everything. Stay tuned as we dive into a world of contrasting lives and the consequences of reaching for the impossible. In a modest corner of the city of Ashton, a place where the towering skyscrapers of the downtown area cast long shadows over the smaller, humbler neighborhoods, lived a young woman named Lily. She wasn't born into wealth or privilege, and she didn't have the luxury of chasing after expensive dreams or desires. Instead, she had the kind of strength that comes from a life of perseverance, a quiet dignity passed down from her parents, who were both hardworking people. Lily's father, a kind man with a steady job as a schoolteacher, was the heart of the family. He wasn't rich by any means. His paycheck was enough to cover the bills and put food on the table. But there was little left over for anything more. Her mother, on the other hand, worked tirelessly at the local market, selling fresh produce to those in the neighborhood. Despite the long hours she spent under the harsh sunlight, her mother always wore a smile, never letting the weariness show. From an early age, Lily had learned the value of hard work and humility. While other children played in the streets, Lily helped her parents with their daily tasks. Her world was small, but filled with love and respect, values that made her proud of who she was. She had dreams, too. Dreams that weren't too big for a girl like her. But they were dreams she kept close to her heart, written down in the pages of a small notebook she carried everywhere. These poems were her escape, her secret way of exploring the world beyond her immediate surroundings. A world where she could be more than the cleaner at the Golden Fork restaurant. Lily's job at the Golden Fork was far from glamorous. She spent her days mopping floors, scrubbing tables, and cleaning the mess left behind by customers who hardly gave her a second thought. She moved through the restaurant quietly, her presence often going unnoticed by the well-dressed diners who came and went, oblivious to the effort it took to keep their surroundings spotless. But Lily had a way of carrying herself that was different from the others in her line of work. Despite the long hours, the backbreaking chores, and the lack of recognition, there was an inner dignity that seemed to radiate from her. It was a quiet strength, one that spoke of a woman who knew her worth even if no one else did. Between her shifts, Lily would retreat to the small staff room, a cramped space tucked away behind the kitchen, where she would take out her notebook and write. The words flowed freely from her pen, capturing the emotions she couldn't always express aloud. Her poetry reflected the world she lived in, the struggles, the beauty in small things, and the dreams that refused to die. In those stolen moments of peace, Lily allowed herself to imagine a life beyond the restaurant, a life where her words would mean something, where her dreams could take flight. It was one evening, during a busy dinner rush, when her life would change in a way she could never have imagined. Daniel, the regional director of one of the city's largest banks, had come to dine at the Golden Fork with a group of colleagues. He was a man of impeccable taste, well-dressed, and seemingly out of place in a restaurant like this, where the patrons were mostly middle-class families and young professionals looking for a nice meal. As he sat at a corner booth, his eyes occasionally wandered, scanning the room with an air of quiet superiority. It wasn't that he was unkind, but there was something about his demeanor that made it clear he was used to the finer things in life. The evening went on as expected, with the clink of silverware and the hum of quiet conversation filling the air. That was, until Daniel dropped his pen. It was an expensive pen, the kind that would be difficult to replace. But he didn't seem concerned about it. As he reached down to pick it up, his hand brushed against Lily's, who had been cleaning nearby. She was used to this kind of accidental contact, hands grazing hands in the midst of busy work. But what happened next was unexpected. Daniel looked up at her, his gaze meeting hers. For a moment, there was silence. It was a small moment, fleeting, but in that instant, Lily felt something shift in the air. It was as if time had paused, and for just a second, she wasn't just the cleaner in the room, she was someone of importance. He took the pen from her hand with a small smile, his eyes lingering on hers for a fraction longer than necessary. "There's something different about you," he said, his voice carrying an undertone of surprise. "You don't quite belong here." Lily didn't know what to say. She wasn't accustomed to people noticing her. Most of the time, she was invisible, just another worker in the background, part of the machinery that kept the restaurant running smoothly. She forced a smile, nodding politely. "Just doing my job, sir," she said, her voice soft but steady. But Daniel was intrigued. He didn't know why, but something about her had caught his attention. He wasn't used to people like her, people who worked in service positions yet seemed so effortlessly dignified. It wasn't just her quiet grace. It was the way she carried herself, as if she had nothing to prove, yet held herself with a quiet confidence that made her stand out in a room full of strangers. Later that evening, when Daniel was about to leave, he asked to speak with her. To her surprise, he invited her to join him and his colleagues for a drink after the meal, a gesture that felt completely out of place. At first, Lily hesitated. It wasn't that she didn't want to speak to him. It was the fact that she knew she didn't belong in his world. She wasn't like the other women he would spend his time with, the ones dressed in expensive gowns and perfectly styled hair. But there was something about him, something that made her feel as if this moment, this strange encounter, might just be the beginning of something different. "I promise it'll be brief," Daniel said, his tone warm and sincere. "I just want to know more about you." Against her better judgment, Lily agreed, and for the first time in a long while, she found herself stepping outside of her comfort zone. What followed was a whirlwind romance that neither of them had expected. Over the next few weeks, Daniel pursued her with an intensity that both flattered and frightened Lily. He showered her with gifts, flowers, jewelry, and extravagant dinners at high-end restaurants. He told her stories of his life, of the places he'd been, and the future he saw for himself. He spoke of dreams and ambitions, of a life of luxury and success. And as he spoke, he made it clear that he saw something in Lily that none of the others in his world possessed, a kind of purity, an authenticity that made her different from the women he was used to. For Lily, the attention was overwhelming, but also intoxicating. It wasn't that she didn't feel undeserving, she did. But there was something in Daniel's gaze, something in his insistence, that made her believe maybe, just maybe, she could belong to a world of wealth and privilege. She had never known such luxury. The simple dinners, the nights spent watching movies with Daniel, the gentle way he treated her. These were things she had only dreamed of. But beneath it all, there was still a sense of unease. She knew that a love built on gifts and promises might not be enough to overcome the differences in their worlds. But for now, she was willing to believe in the dream he painted for her. Little did she know, this dream was about to shatter in a way she never expected. 3 months had passed since Lily's life had been swept up in a whirlwind of luxury and promises. A world that had once seemed so far out of reach, now within her grasp. The days were filled with the dazzling glow of Daniel's affection. He had swept her off her feet, introducing her to his high society friends, taking her to the finest restaurants, and showering her with gifts that seemed to fill the emptiness of her past. For a while, Lily had allowed herself to believe that this life, this man, might be everything she had ever dreamed of. The house he had bought her was nothing short of magnificent, spacious, elegant, adorned with furniture that looked as though it belonged in a magazine. But it wasn't long before the cracks began to show. It started with the smallest things. The way Daniel would sigh loudly when her family came over. The way he rolled his eyes when she made a joke about something simple, something that reminded her of her roots. The warning signs were there. But Lily had been so captivated by the new world she was entering that she chose to ignore them. She didn't want to believe that the man she had fallen for, the man who had treated her so well in the beginning, would ever turn into someone who looked down on her for the very things that made her who she was. It all came crashing down one evening. The house, which had once seemed like a dream come true, suddenly felt like a prison. Lily had spent the afternoon with her mother, who had come to visit her in her new home. They had watched a local drama on television together, sitting on the plush leather sofas in the living room, both feeling at ease in the quiet comfort of each other's company. For Lily, these moments with her mother were precious. They reminded her of the days when life was simpler, when she was a young girl dreaming of a future that now seemed so far away. That evening, as the sun began to set and the golden hues of the sky filtered through the large windows, Daniel came home from work. His footsteps echoed through the hallways, a sign that he was in a rush, eager to return to the comfort of his home. But when he stepped into the living room and saw Lily and her mother sitting together, relaxed and at peace, something inside him snapped. "What is this?" he exploded, his voice sharp and full of fury. "You've turned my house into a servant's quarters?" Lily froze, taken aback by the intensity of his outburst. Her mother, who had always been so kind and gentle, stood up quickly, clearly startled by the harshness in Daniel's tone. Before Lily could say a word, he was already pacing, his face contorted with disgust. "Look at you both, sprawled on my imported leather sofa like you're still living in some rundown house," he sneered, his eyes burning with contempt. "In this house, we don't behave like poor people. Save your market woman habits for your husband's mud house." The words stung, each one like a slap to her face. Lily had never seen this side of Daniel before, not in the months they had been together. It was as if the man she had fallen in love with had disappeared, replaced by someone she didn't recognize. Her mother, visibly hurt by the insult, opened her mouth to defend herself. But Daniel wasn't finished. "Do you think because you've married me, you're somehow above your family?" he continued, his voice dripping with venom. "I lifted you from scrubbing toilets and cleaning tables to live in a mansion. And this is how you repay me, by behaving like you're still a cleaner." Lily's heart sank as she heard these words. She had always known that her background was something that would make her different in the eyes of some people. But she had never imagined that the man she loved, the man she had trusted, would turn her humble origins into something to be ashamed of. That night, as her mother left in tears, Daniel's cruelty only intensified. His words seemed to hang in the air, lingering like a dark cloud that cast a shadow over everything she had once believed in. He had shown her a world that glittered with promises, but now that same world was suffocating her. As days passed, the abuse became a daily occurrence. Each morning, as Daniel left for work in his perfectly tailored suit, he would remind Lily of her place. "Don't forget where I found you, mopping floors and cleaning tables," he would say, his words cutting deeper each time. "You're nothing without me. Don't you ever forget that." It wasn't just a verbal abuse. It was the way he treated her family, the way he made her feel as though they were beneath him. When her father's roof leaked during a heavy rainstorm, Daniel made a show of paying for the repairs, only to use it against her later. "Your father couldn't even fix his own roof," he would say, his voice full of mockery. "I had to save him from drowning in his sleep. This is the family you come from, people who can't even maintain a simple house." Lily's heart ached as she listened to these words. She had never been ashamed of her family. Her father, though poor, was a man of great dignity, and her mother, despite the hard work she did every day, had always carried herself with grace. But Daniel didn't see it that way. To him, their modest lives were a constant reminder of how far he had lifted her, and every time he threw that in her face, it felt like a little piece of her soul was chipped away. It wasn't just her family he mocked, it was her very existence. At dinner parties, where Daniel would host his wealthy colleagues, he would proudly announce, "My wife, she used to clean the very restaurant where we met. Now look at her, trying to act like she belongs in our circle." His friends would laugh, and Lily would smile. But inside, her heart shattered a little more with each passing moment. When her mother fell ill and needed medicine, Daniel made her beg for money. "Your market woman mother probably got sick from sleeping in that dump house," he taunted. "Should I buy her a mosquito net too? Let me show everyone how charitable I am." Even her poetry wasn't safe from his cruelty. One day, while cleaning the house, Daniel found her notebook, the one where she poured her heart out, the one that held all of her dreams and hopes. He read her words aloud, mocking them as he did. "A cleaner's daughter trying to be a writer?" he sneered. "Know your place. Lily, some of us were born for greatness, others for serving tables. Each time, she tried to defend herself, to remind him of the dignity that her family had given her. Daniel would retort, "Without me, you'd still be wearing that ugly uniform, smelling of bleach and leftover food. I made you somebody. Never forget that." It was in these moments, when the weight of his words and actions seemed too much to bear, that Lily felt her spirit breaking. She had never imagined that love, something she had once longed for, could be used as a weapon. She had come to believe that she was worthy of a life filled with love and respect. But Daniel had shown her that in his eyes, she was nothing more than a servant. Lily knew, deep down, that something had to change, but she couldn't bring herself to leave. Not yet. She still believed, foolishly perhaps, that the man who had once shown her kindness could still be the same man who loved her. But with each passing day, it became harder to remember that love, that tenderness. All that remained was the cruel reality of a marriage that had never been built on equality or respect. And so, Lily found herself trapped in a world where her worth was measured by the man who had married her, by the house he had given her, and by the life he had promised. But as the days wore on, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the life she was meant to live. The woman she had been, strong, proud, and full of dreams, seemed to be slipping away, suffocated by the very life that had once seemed like a dream come true. And then, one night, something happened that would change everything. That night, after yet another humiliating dinner party, Lily found herself standing in front of the bathroom mirror. The house was quiet now, the echoes of laughter from Daniel's colleagues still lingering in the air. She stared at her reflection, tracing the outlines of her face as if searching for the woman she used to be, the woman who had dreams, the woman who had once believed in herself. Now, she felt like a stranger in her own skin. The smile she had forced to wear for so long seemed hollow, and the words of Daniel, the man she had once loved, echoed in her ears like a constant reminder of her worthlessness. Her father's words came back to her in that moment. Money can feed your stomach, but it can't nourish your soul. And she knew, deep down, that no amount of wealth or fancy dinners could ever make her feel truly happy if it meant sacrificing her dignity and her self-respect. In that moment of quiet reflection, Lily finally made a decision. She would not allow herself to be broken anymore. She would not let Daniel define her. She would reclaim her life, her voice, and her worth, no matter the cost. The next day, Daniel's anger flared again, his jealousy and bitterness shining through in every word. Lily had just finished preparing breakfast when he walked into the kitchen, his eyes narrowing when he saw her still in her old uniform, her cleaning apron that had become a symbol of everything he despised. "Why are you still wearing that?" he sneered. "You've had months to get used to this life." "Lily, why are you acting like you're still some cleaner?" "I'm not acting like anything," Lily said, her voice calm but firm. "This is who I am, and you have no right to change that." Her words caught him off guard. For a moment, he stood there in silence, his face reddening with fury. The contempt he had always shown her was now replaced with something darker, something dangerous. "You ungrateful woman," he spat, stepping closer to her. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You think you can go back to your miserable life? To your pathetic, poor family?" Lily took a deep breath. She could feel the rage building inside her, but she didn't let it control her. This was the moment, she thought. This was the moment where I choose my own path. I didn't ask you to save me. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady. "You didn't lift me from anything. You tried to break me, but I won't let you." She turned and walked away from him, heading toward the guest bathroom. The house that had once seemed so grand now felt like a cage, and she knew she needed to escape it before she lost herself entirely. She locked the door behind her, just as Daniel's voice echoed through the walls. Furious and threatening, he pounded on the door, shouting insults, calling her names. He yelled that she was nothing, that she was ungrateful, that she was too small for this world. But Lily stood in silence, breathing deeply, her heart racing. knowing that the only way out was through the strength she had hidden away for so long. Her escape came not long after, when the door suddenly burst open. It wasn't Daniel, it was Marcus, the neighbor who had always been kind to her, always looked out for her in quiet ways. He was standing there, his strong presence filling the doorway, with a few other neighbors behind him. "Let her go, Daniel," Marcus said firmly, his voice commanding. "You don't own her. You never did." Daniel's face turned a deep shade of red as he backed away from Marcus. He was stunned, caught off guard by the sudden defiance from those who had once remained silent. But Lily didn't look back. She didn't need to. As Marcus helped her to her feet, he placed a hand on her shoulder and whispered, "You're free now. Lily, let's go." The neighbors rallied behind her, their presence a quiet strength that gave her the courage to leave everything behind. Her marriage, the mansion, the false promises. For the first time in a long while, Lily felt like she was truly living. And as she left Daniel's house, she knew that she had just taken the first step toward reclaiming her life. Conclusion: a new beginning and the power of dignity. Lily's journey didn't end with her escape from Daniel. It was only the beginning. Marcus, seeing the strength in Lily and the potential she had always possessed, helped her secure a loan to purchase the Golden Fork restaurant. Lily's hard work and determination, honed through years of cleaning tables and mopping floors, were now the foundation of her success. She didn't just buy the restaurant, she transformed it. She implemented better working conditions for the staff, gave them opportunities for growth, and created a small library where employees could read and write during their breaks. It wasn't just a business, it was a community, a place where dignity and respect were valued above all else. As Lily's restaurant flourished, Daniel's life took a sharp downturn. His arrogance, once so unwavering, was now shattered. He no longer dined in fine restaurants. He was relegated to roadside diners, eating alone, his wealth no longer able to protect him from the consequences of his actions. He tried to crawl back to Lily, offering to buy her parents a new house and a new car, pleading for her forgiveness. But she refused. "My father still rides his motorcycle to school, teaching children to dream beyond their circumstances," Lily said when he came to her. "My mother still sells her vegetables, proud that her daughter learned dignity from her example. Their worth isn't in what they own, but in what they taught me." At the grand reopening of the restaurant, Lily's parents sat proudly at the head of the table, their modest clothing a stark contrast to the luxury that had once been offered to her. But it wasn't the clothes that mattered. It was the love and respect that radiated from them, qualities that no amount of money could ever buy. Lily's poetry, once hidden away in the corners of her life, now adorned the walls of the restaurant. One poem in particular caught the eye of many who entered. "They called my father poor, but he taught me to be rich in spirit. They mocked my mother's market stall, but she showed me how to stand tall. They sneered at my cleaner's uniform, but it clothed me in dignity." And as for Marcus, the neighbor who had saved her, he became more than just a friend. He became the love of her life. His proposal wasn't marked by expensive rings or lavish displays. It was a simple promise: your background is not your shame, but your strength. Together, they built something stronger than any mansion or bank account could offer. Lily ran the most successful restaurant chain in Ashton, and her parents remained in their modest home, content with the love and respect they had always known. As for Daniel, he was just a distant memory, a man whose life had been built on cruelty and arrogance, now left to eat his meals alone, humbled by the very people he had once looked down upon. The story of Lily's life serves as a powerful reminder that dignity, respect, and love cannot be bought. They are earned through perseverance, humility, and the willingness to stand up for oneself. No matter where one comes from, a humble background does not define a person's worth. It is the strength of their spirit, the integrity of their actions, and the kindness they show to others that truly matter. And so, Lily's story continues, a tale of triumph, resilience, and the unbreakable power of dignity. Thank you for watching and experiencing Lily's incredible journey with us. Her story reminds us that life is full of surprises, and the choices we make can lead us down unexpected paths. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional and thought-provoking tales from Empathy Stories.